my moment of fame. I feel like we were just talking about Ryan Reynolds and Ryan Gosling, and I feel like them right now, big star. So thank you for joining tonight. This presentation, I'll probably skip over the first few slides quickly because it's general stuff about how you probably all know. This is a presentation I have made to numerous staff team from municipalities, from architecture and traffic planning firms and so on, to talk about our research and our bike-friendly building program because folks are very aware of Hub Cycling Education Program, of certainly of our events and of all the great advocacy work done by you folks and Nav and Kathy, but less known are our kind of newer areas, which are the research and the bike-friendly building program, which are I'm done by a small team that I lead. So this is real general stuff. I think you know Hub's mission and all of the amazing promotional events we do. And if anyone's got any questions about any of them, I'm fairly knowledgeable too, because I worked in education and to some extent events and previously too, and worked with the leadership team on them. Certainly, you know that Hub is the biggest cycling educator in Canada, one of the biggest in North America, and with a broad array of cycling education programs. Yeah, I'm not sure you guys know about local committees, though. Let me know if you got any questions about the local committees, because anyway, so I definitely, when I speak to everybody, I talk about the fact that you are all our local knowledge. Like, having a staff, a Hub staff in an office in Vancouver doesn't give us that local knowledge, that local legitimacy that you folks as local committee members in your communities have. So I really make that point when I make this presentation. But launching into generally about the research program, the program started in the late 90s. The first project we did is the upper right corner. It's called Not Just Bike Racks. All of these are on the research tab on the Hub page. You've probably seen them. That one was something, it's kind of my own initiative in that we were starting to hear from property development companies that the game was changing. Suddenly, they're not only more thoughtful and rigorous bylaw requirements around buildings, but the market was starting to demand that buildings have really good, safe, accessible bike parking, but not just that, all the related amenities and that people who cycled were made to feel like rewarded for having done so. I date back to when anytime I showed up on my bicycle anywhere in Vancouver, it was get that thing away from here. Don't bring it into the building. Don't bring it in the elevator. And let's put your bike parking on P6 in a scary corner. Like I come from those days, dating myself. And some of you may have lived that too. So we did a project. We partnered with the Urban Development Institute and talked to their members, which are all the major property development companies in BC. And we did an interesting sort of snapshot at what was the state of knowledge, of lack of knowledge, of kind of understanding trade-offs if developers started allocating more and more valuable space and investments into bike parking, which meant in places something else. So that was a very interesting project. We learned a lot about how things were evolving. We also saw some really cool best practices. And they're all in that report. It's still a very, times have changed, but it's still a very relevant report, and we learned a lot from it. And that project led very directly to the emergence of our bike-friendly building programs. I'll come back to that. So the next research project we did was an idea born of the Hub board and particularly of Jeff Lee, saying let's talk to Translink and the municipalities about GIS mapping and classifying the entire cycle route network for Metro Vancouver. So that was a huge project. It took years to do. Some of you may have been around for that. The first challenge was just coming up with a common classification system because each municipality had their own. And what then they had different nomenclature for it and different classification systems, or maybe even none. They just said, well, this looks good, we'll call it comfortable for all, or AAA, whatever. But so there was a number of months of just getting TransLink and all the municipalities in the region to buy into a new classification system. Some of them took it on the chin because some of the things they had classified here suddenly by the classification system went down. And in fact, some bike routes just stopped being called bike routes because they really shouldn't have counted as one. So that was an important first step. And then it was where municipalities had good data about the cycle route network, getting that, and then working with the local committees to go out and actually verify it. And then quite a few municipalities, and don't mean to be rough on them, but they really didn't have good information about their cycle route networks. Certainly not GIS data. They didn't even have necessarily accurate maps. So there was a whole lot more work going out. Google Street Maps helped a lot, but also local committees going out and just helping inform us and just really collecting data, information about each network, length, quality, all the different characteristics, and then classifying them according to the classification system. We'll come back to that classification system. We talk about the newest research, which is our newest benchmarking report. So then the advocacy team, so largely NAV working with Evan, did 2 other research reports based on that GIS data set. And I just want to say that data set does not exist, as we understand, for any other urban region in North America.
Yeah.
I've checked across Canada and also talked to the major national US organizations. And we really have something unique and powerful in that. And TransLink are supporting us to update it constantly because it's such a powerful tool. The municipalities are using it for their planning and even reconsidering their planning. It's being used by academics. It's being used certainly by TransLink and MOTI. And it's also being used by private sector where they get contracts for municipalities. And we've heard from all of it. So it's really a powerful tool that was born of Hub and has now really grown to have a whole lot more impacts. So that GIS data was used to look at where is there potential for cycle highways in the region, where would they be most beneficial, and where is the best prospect of putting them in. So that was a very forward-looking report analysis. And then the other one was, again, looking at the quality, the connectedness of the network related to socioeconomic factors that we know about populations in Metro Vancouver, no surprise. The comfortable for most and the most connected networks tended to be where the more socioeconomically well-off people were, the more white people, like where you got more diversity and lower incomes tended to be lesser quality networks. So that was a great piece to look at how do we equalize the network across the region. And so our most recent report was our second, but our first really rigorous benchmarking report about the network. So so we just released our second benchmarking report. So we did a very basic benchmarking report based on 2019 data, and it was just looking at a little bit of collision data we could get and injury data. There wasn't much, and some census data at the time. So very basic analysis. But for this report, we partnered with a number of health and climate resilience academics, looking at secondary research and data sets that we'd never compared with the network before. And so to do this research, it was really important that we pick data points that match census releases. So what you're seeing here, what we did with this research is looking at 2016 and 2021. So the last 2 data releases for census, and then our best estimation of what the cycle route network was in those dates, and looking what we learned from comparing those data sets. So TransLink will be releasing, we're working with TransLink right now. Someone's got some background noise.
Yeah, could you please mute yourselves? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for you to ask questions right along as we go, but there was some background noise. Thank you. So so TransLink, we're working with TransLink right now. My colleague Tim Davidson, who is our GIS stalwart and the one who did the bulk of this work is working with TransLink staff right now on a 2023 data update, and it's just in the last details being nailed down where we're going to get a release from TransLink, but working with us on what this looks like in terms of total kilometers and ratings about comfortable for most, comfortable for some, comfortable for few, up to the end of 2023. So that data release is coming soon, and it will include a breakdown about each of the municipalities and subregions and so on. So we've got some of that here, but that was intentionally put to 2021 to match a census release. So if you're looking at talking to your municipalities about the current state, hang on a month and you're going to have that 2023 release, and then you'll have a really another more powerful tool to bring forward to them. But this is a snapshot 2021. I'm not going to go through the whole report. There's a lot in it, and I'll speak to some of the elements that were in it. So these are real high level things. And so there was a big confounding factor, of course, being 2016 and 2021. Anyone remember COVID? I do. So that really threw off a number of things. You know, the ability of municipalities to, I mean, it impacted their budgets, it impacted their ability to go out and put in infrastructure. It impacted also their focus on all of these COVID-related temporary traffic changes, which were really important and informed some permanent things that could happen, kind of accelerated them. But it also meant that what would have maybe been a more kind of a linear progression, A, around infrastructure installation, but B, around cycling rates, got totally thrown off. So, of course, we know that during that time, some people who weren't going to commuting to work anymore, either temporarily or permanently lost work, or were working from home. And then also people who had to work were in different demographic classes that may have been less tended to cycle anyway, or may have been in the trades where they needed to drive a truck or something like that. So, you know, this would have been a very different findings if it had not been for COVID, but nonetheless, we sought to find out what we could. So we see that between 2016 and 2019, 522 kilometers of routes were added to the network, 42% of which were comfortable for most. And one of the cool outcomes of the GIS mapping classification we did is that the TransLink are funding now only new infrastructure that is deemed comfortable for most. So any of the BICs, any of the TransLink funding is going only to the best of the infrastructure now. And we also did some sort of shorter snapshots, so 2019 to 21, and because we had those two data sets, we could also compare. And, you know, I'd really ask you to go in and look at the report as a whole, because this is just some of the high level stuff, and we really dug into a whole bunch of other things. I'll talk about those in a moment. But again, we're seeing 2016 to 2021 for the whole region, and for breakdowns by municipality here. And you know, there's kind of no surprises here. You know, it's interesting that Bowen Island increased their classification by 100% because they had none. They added 2 kilometers, so they look good, but that's because they added their first 2 kilometers of bike route network. So, you know, what you see here, you got to put it in terms of the context of the municipality itself, what they already had, what they're working with, right? But there's some really interesting data. This exact chart is going to come out around 2023 data. So you're going to be seeing that very soon. What we see are the top bars are 2016 data, the bottom bars are 2021 data. And you can see how much was comfortable for some, comfortable for view, comfortable for very few. In a moment, you'll see how that classification system is in general, how we determine those things. And then this is by facility type. Now, facility type is somewhat related to the classification you'll get, but not necessarily. So a bike lane may have nice distance from vehicles, maybe on a quiet road, but very little traffic, or it could have very little separation from traffic, high speeds, high traffic rates. So that fundamentally alters how it's rated. but it's good to look at them both ways. So, multi-use path, protected bike lane, shared road. Shared road can be comfortable for most if it's a residential street with very low traffic and facilitated crossing. So, this doesn't necessarily tell you about the classification rating in it. So here's some secondary research. This is Kate Teschke, who's just amazing. She's worked with us in all our projects, I think. Retired from UBC, but she did research for years and years around what motivates and what inhibits people from cycling. So on the left is what deters and what motivates cycling. No surprise, but that helped us inform about how we rate the path. So on the right-hand side, comfortable for most would be at the top, you'll see bike paths and protected bike lanes are all comfortable for most because they're all going to have that separation. They're going to be on low traffic streets and so on. A multi-use path can be anywhere from comfortable for most to comfortable for very few. Because again, a multi-use path, depending on where it is, it's very hard to share a path with pedestrians, people walking dogs, now e-scooters and so on. So, a lot depends on the design and the usage. Shared roadway can do the whole spectrum in terms of comfortable for most through to comfortable for very few. A bike lane you see just as it is drawn as it's represented there could never be comfortable for most because it lacks that separation from vehicular traffic, from automobiles. And then a bike accessible shoulder. I mean, God knows we've ridden enough of those, but they're never going to be comfortable for most. They're always intimidating and have an increased danger factor to them. Okay, so I'm gonna stop doing that. So I have to hit page up. Okay, so some other things that are in the research, but it was very textual, so there weren't really any visuals I could show you here. We looked at a whole bunch of other factors, and we could kind of relate it to the nature of the cycle route network as it is, but just also talked about it generally to inform traffic planners and others. So things like noise. How does noise impact people generally? What could that say about the impact of noise on cyclists, your health, your well-being, your ability to focus and hear what's going on around you, your awareness of your environment? And then some general recommendations around where possible, how to design bike routes that avoid minimal impact of high decibel noises. We also looked at, with heat domes, a big thing around climate resiliency is how do you mitigate the impacts of the heat zone, a heat dome or just extreme heats? Because, we're trying to ride bikes to move away from the impacts of GHGs and global warming, but on a super hot day, who can ride? So things like shade cover and other factors which could help improve the quality of the ride, like the tolerability of a ride in extreme heat. And then we were able to get some information about where there is tree cover. It was a little hard to get accurate for the whole region because trees could be small, trees could be big. So we have to take it with a bit of a grain of salt, but we did an initial kick at the can at looking at where's the tree cover and how would that speak to, do we want to start looking at comfortability ratings and designing infrastructure as much as possible to take advantage of shade and tree cover. I mean, in my perfect world, the cycle highway would have some kind of cover on it for rain and sun because we expect a lot of people to use that. So anyway, another interesting factor, we looked at slopes and how they inhibit riding, but also the danger of slopes. Because in wet, you're more likely to fall on the slope, but you're more likely to have an accident because of speed. Slope also is related to pollution. So we looked at pollution and again, proximity to pollution sources and how that might inform the cycle network design. And for example, some secondary research we got that showed the depth at which you're breathing really impacts whether pollution is deleterious to your health or not. So if you're climbing a hill and breathing really hard near a pollution source, that is going to potentially have longer term impacts on your health, where that same higher level pollution, if you're not exerting yourself so much, has a way less negative impact on health, on lung health. So that could speak to things like, well, if there is a steep incline, we want to get that away from pollution sources, where if we're on the flats, then that's less of an issue. Right now, we did see that, there aren't, generally pollution levels in the region aren't that high compared to some other urban regions. But if you're near, say, Knight Street or other ones that are major truck routes, I mean, until EVs take over and it's not an issue anymore, we still need to look at that as a factor. So we were able to work with health researchers to get some data sets and secondary research citations to start, getting a dialogue going, just getting considerations as we move forward with this whole project to keep improving the quality, the accessibility of the region cycle work network to start, as much as possible, add in other factors. Now, at times the best bike route may have to parallel a noisy, polluted road, and there's no real way around that. Well, so be it. But where options are available, then to consider those things. So I'm going to take a quick break here before I jump into bike-friendly building, and see if anyone's got any questions. There's a whole lot more to the benchmarking report than that, but that's where I, invite you to dig into it and have a look. And you're welcome to get back in touch with me if you hit I'm Tim@bikehub.ca, or research@bikehub.ca comes to me as well. But any questions, discussion at this time? Just take off your mic, like put on your microphone and talk to me, rather than putting into the chat. Or did I just do the most amazing job of explaining that right now that there's no questions left? Okay. Well, hearing no comments or objections, I'm going to move on to the bike-friendly buildings program. Some of you may be moderately aware of this, but it's really evolving quickly. And again, it's a very unique program service that Hub Cycling provides. So when we completed the Not Just Bike Racks report, working with the Urban Development Institute and their members, and put that out there, we started getting developers getting in touch with us saying, wow, this is really increasingly on our radar. So whether for existing buildings or new building designs, that for whether it's for your green goals, whether it's just purely for marketing, for sales, for rewarding your employees, that cycling amenities, that we learned about something called the amenities war, which is an interesting term, but that now for some buildings, depending on the location and the type of building use, that maybe it used to be a gym or some other amenity that was the most important one. Cycling parking and change rooms and bike repair spaces, all that were suddenly the top of the heap of amenities. So having amenities in buildings were important to either make sales, or where they're downtown buildings and they're seeking to get in the high-end tenants, they had to have really high-end facilities, or they're just not going to compete. And I kind of like that this stuff is being driven by the market and not just by municipal bylaws, because that means they're not being done begrudgingly by developers or building managers. They're being done because it's in their interest, and it's they need to spend the money on it. So we had originally Concert Properties reach out to us and say, at first have a meeting about the research to learn more about it. And then they contracted us to do analysis of 9 of the rental buildings to look at how they could be improved. Because the Concert Properties was originally part of the city of Vancouver. It was an outgrowth. It's become independent now, but they still had a real mandate for affordable housing and serving diverse populations. And they thought, making cycling accessible was a real equity thing, because affordable transportation, health and well-being, and so on. So we very quickly pivoted. We already had the team that did the state of cycling GIS work and so on, and we very quickly pivoted to provide that service for Concert, and we realized there's quite an opportunity here. So over several years, by the way, this is a picture of Bentall Center after they did a complete revamp of their cycling facilities, working with us over a number of years, and they were gorgeous. So you'll see more of that in a bit. So what we did was we formalized a process, and spent some time kind of trying it out with different clients, figuring out where our value proposition was to them, and why they would want to actually spend money on a new consultant they never worked with before. I mean, of course you got your architects, of course you got your engineers, but wait, I need to hire someone to do an active transportation analysis for me. Well, yes, you do. Times are changing, and architects can do an okay job of this, but they don't know it like Hub does. So we did a process. We have a very nicely formatted, very professional reports that we provide and a scoring system. So we will look at where it's a completed building. We'll look at short, long-term storage, bike storage, access and safety. So how easy do you access the building, make your way through the building, get to your bike parking spaces, get to your change rooms. Security for the bicycle theft, safety for the person was a really big one, especially as we're getting more women riding. We're finding things like the safety of the building and the cycle network has a huge impact on the rates of female cyclists, but everyone wants that as well. All the related cycling amenities, and we're seeing from the very basics to amazing amenities put in. We've worked with residential buildings where they put in fully kitted out bike repair rooms, not just one of those quickie stands for a brake adjustment, but somewhere where you could go in and completely build or rebuild a bike, and it becomes a community space for people in the building to share. And it's amazing. Sometimes our clients will surprise us with the cycling amenities they put in. Where it's again an existing building, we will look at policies, incentives, community development, all the different supports you can do that are non-physical to support cycling. And then because we've got the GIS data set for the region and we know about comfort levels, looking at how well connected are you to the cycling network? Where are there gaps to help our clients then talk with their municipality if it's something they can do directly on their property, or talk to municipality and making sure that it's seamless, comfortable for all, right from the broader network to their building and into the building. We have a scoring regime that's very clearly set out, by which we look at all the things within the power of the designer of the physical building, and so they can get anywhere from a bronze to a platinum. We've got one platinum so far. We got somebody else who really wants a platinum to try to do some upgrades, and some more prospects soon. We've had several golds now, but that it becomes a hub as it joins with LEED and everybody else in providing a designation. And it really is complementary to things like LEED, because LEED externalizes the impacts of building design and location on transportation choices. So, LEED is great and all your greening of a building, but that's got to include how does it impact people's transportation choices. So we have we give a letter grade for policies and support because the developer may not control that, and also network context is not necessarily within their power to control. This is an overview of all the different value we provide. Now, that assessment I showed you, we may not provide that for every client, and we're getting increasingly diverse clients now, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But just broadly, we assess and certify buildings. We consult on all aspects of infrastructure for planned and existing developments. Very professional, accessible report that then is used by architects and traffic planners, engineers. And we are developing really good relationships with some architecture firms. We've been referred by architecture firms to their clients because they can do a better job when we're there advising them. Perkins and Will, for example, are the real biggie in town, and they like working with us, which is very rewarding. Analyzing sites to help around rezoning applications, development permit applications. We've had several cases where we provide information, which is an analysis of why choices are actually positive for cycling, but may go against what are otherwise set bylaws, so that developers have gotten variances. We're not going to help them get a variance, which is anti-cycling, but we've managed to get a couple where it's been good for both the outcome of cycling and for them to get their variance, so they could move forward with their overall development as they're hoping to. And then awarding and recognizing leaders in cycling infrastructure. the full range of things we're doing right now. We've got 3 clients in Moody Center where it's rezoning application, and that's a new transit oriented development focus. So now we're looking at decreasing or maybe even eliminating car parking. So it's becoming more important that a building is designed to work well for cycling and multimodal travel. So all of our analyses look at cycling as part of an overall transportation infrastructure. So we'll look at not only bike parking for regular bikes, for e-bikes, for long tail family bikes, adaptive bikes for people with disabilities, cargo bikes, and another thing that's coming up is a whole lot about e-bike charging, and I'll come back around to that because we're working on an interesting project on that right now. But also, where is there public bike share, where or might you want to have building specific bike share? People have a regular bike, but if they can borrow an e-cargo bike to do their Costco run, then that means they don't need to buy a car, right? Or and also proximity to transit, and all of those things. So and car share is also sometimes an absolutely excellent complement to really good bike parking, because again, you don't need to own a car is if the few times you need a car that you've got on-site car share, if it's not otherwise publicly available. So yeah, some rezoning applications. We've informed some projects from day 1 through to completion. So Benthall Center, I mentioned, they approached us when they were just beginning, and we did initial assessment. They came back, we advised them on choices. We did a final reassessment. They got a gold, they went out a platinum, but their total number of bike parking is low. They're adding another tower, so they're hoping to increase their bike parking. And we were just talking with them last week about they want to get up to a platinum. We're working on the redevelopment of the Hudson Bay building downtown, and they want to make a 2-story active transportation center to serve the downtown core, not just building tenants. And they're going to have the first ride-in bike parking, like from the street, you ride right in the building down to a ramp. Like, it's very exciting. They're looking at examples not from elsewhere in BC, but worldwide, looking at European and Asian examples. We advised an early client was Oak Ridge Center, and they're putting in multiple automated bike silos, which is going to be the first in North America that I can tell. We just advised several major older condos that are now, the stratas, the building managers are seeing that they got a big problem with the poor or lack of bike parking that was originally designed in, and how can we go in and strategically add high quality bike parking for them. So we just did a couple of those, and looks like we might be expanding that area, because that relates to our older buildings research. I forgot to mention that. Another research project we did recently was with the Building Owners and Managers Association and Landlord BC, to look at, what's the status of all these older buildings with poor bike parking, and what are all the different potential policy levers and practical solutions to that. So building on that report, we're now hoping we can move into helping retrofit older buildings, because that's a stop. You may have excellent infrastructure in front of your home, you may have great bike parking at work, but if the building you live in, it presents a huge barrier to cycling, well, that's going to really stop you. We're doing some unique projects. We're working for Quadreal right now, developing a safety manual for across Canada, all their buildings across Canada, existing and planned around e-bike safety and fires. And I think this is an unrealized issue right now. The municipalities are just starting to tune into it. We're just speaking with a couple of reps from different municipalities last week around it, because their lithium-ion batteries and battery fires are killing people and burning down buildings. And it's places like New York City are stepping in with very strong bylaws and regulation around it. You've got some building managers who are saying you cannot charge an e-bike or an e-scooter in our building. We won't allow it. Well, that's a terrible direction to go. So how do we inform and do building design related to fire safety systems, and otherwise advocate around safety standards so that e-bikes can work and we don't have a blowback on safety issues? So we're developing that for Quadreal in partnership with they're called Senez Engineering, and their fire safety systems engineering company who are quite keen to look at this too, because they also see it as a major issue, and looking at, how do you design bike parking? How do you inform people? And how do you otherwise, communicate so that you're minimizing the possibility of a lithium ion battery fire that jump to the next battery and the next battery and the next battery until you've got a building on fire, right? So that's an interesting project we're working on right now as well. So quite a diversity of them, and we're learning as we go. Every time a new project comes, it's like, okay, let's skill up on this area, let's do our study. And so that through it, Hub is becoming a knowledge base, a very unique one, not just in Vancouver, but as far as I can see across Canada on the e-bike and fire safety. Here's an example, or here's a picture of who all our clients have been. We got a few new ones since then. Just met with someone from Tribe this morning because want to work with them on doing more of their condo buildings, their property management company, but just a broad range. We've done multiple hospitals and help them upgrade their cycling facilities. We're working with Lionsgate right now. Just a broad range of clients or broad range of projects. This map, we need to add a bunch more icons to that. We've added many projects since that map was put on. And I think we got a few pictures. So this is Benthall Center and everything they did based on working with us. And that was, as I said, a gold, and then went up into a platinum. And this is so Boffo do boutique residential, and this is a Yaletown empty nester building, and they really went for it. They did just stunning work on it. A committed elevator with its own separate entrance from the alley. It's lit. It's got cameras every which way. When you go into the lobby, there's cameras on every room downstairs, so you can see before you even go downstairs every room and who's in them. Same if you're going up, you can see on monitors before you even go up in the elevator who's out in the alley. You've got multiple separated rooms for regular bikes, e-bikes, and a fully kitted out bike repair space. So we spec'd all the tools. We found a bunch of posters about how to do all different types of repairs on your bike. And again, it's not just a bike, it's kind of a maker space and a community space for people who love cycling. You move from a home where you had your own garage, your own space to repair a bike, into a condo where you're not even supposed to bring your bike up, but it's certainly not meant for repairing your bike. That's quite a loss to those of us who actually like to, fiddle the bikes. That yellow bike in there, that's my mountain bike. I built it from bare frame up because I love building bikes. I would really hurt if I didn't have that ability. So again, for livability and allowing people to move to different types of housing, this kind of thought into design for cycling is I think it's looking ahead. And just the last point is we're really about future-proofing buildings. Bylaws are helpful, and the municipalities are really amping it up, and they tend to leapfrog each other. But either way, bylaws can be the trailing edge, and they're not necessarily anticipating future demand. So we try to be there to look at, help developers and everyone else say, well, that may be what you're seeing now or what's being required now, but you don't want this building to lose its relevance 10 years down the road, because look at just 10-year-old buildings now. They're obsolete in terms of cycling facilities. So, and in terms of, for Hub, we operate this as a social enterprise, so a money-making venture to support our other programs, but also as a really powerful new way to further Hub's mandate. Because if you affect the built form, that lasts for decades. And if you get it wrong, it's hard to upgrade some buildings. It's really hard to retrofit them. So we're very excited about filling this space. And as far as we see, we were the first in North America doing this. We've seen service providers doing parallel work in Europe and Australia, and we're seeing some sort of inroads in North America about it. But we seem to be the first mover on this type of service in definitely in Metro Vancouver, but as far as we can see, Canada and even North America. So I'm going to stop sharing now because I do tend to blather on, and just welcome any questions. Okay, so I haven't been looking at the chat because I've just seen my screen. So some comments. Yes, Hub is the biggest in, well, we've seen Washington, D.C. There may be one on par with us as a cycling educator, but we're by far the biggest in Canada. Certainly for active transportation, we're the only game in town. There's some others who do education around sports, competitive cycling, but they still don't have the infrastructure and the knowledge and the expertise we have. What else here? I'm doing great. Oh, thank you, Jesse. I like that. Tell you this is very serious. Landlords are discriminating against renters on this. We need national standards. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the thing about municipalities leapfrogging each other isn't really helpful, and developers don't like it when every municipality's got different bylaws. It really makes them hard to work. It makes it hard for them to work because they're trying to adjust to different hoops for different municipalities. Yeah. So any questions, conversation people want about that? I know I talked fast. That was a huge download. So I'll take a breath. And I do also have to say, if you know any prospective buildings, stratas, developments that are going on in an area, especially if they're transit-oriented development type, then flag me to them, because we're still trying to build our market base and bring the program to viability, profitability for Hub. So it's really important that we keep building our client base.
What's the best way to do something like that? Should we just email you?
Yeah, for sure. Now, either if you know somebody, you can flag them to the, bikehub.ca/BFB webpage, and there's a form they can submit, which comes straight to me, or just give them the BFB at Bike Hub, or just the Tim at Bike Hub email, and I'll follow up with them directly. It's interesting because a couple of the stratas we worked with recently, I mean, they're motivated for very different reasons. It came from the strata councils, but there's one we're looking at. It's right near the Arbutus Greenway, an older, huge residential tower, and they're finding two things are happening. One is, people are aging and they're moving to different homes, so they're getting younger families move in, kids bikes, family bikes, and their bike parking's not ready for it. But also, the seniors are still staying in the building, are loving e-bikes. And suddenly, where they weren't cycling before, e-bikes are getting them cycling. And again, the cycling quality, capacity isn't there, and the charging facilities, safe charging facilities aren't there. So in their case, it's market driven. Like, their strata members are having a hard time selling their place because people are looking at newer buildings that have those facilities rather than older ones that just they were a total oversight at the time.
Hey Tim,
Yes.
this is Bharat here.
Hi,
So
Brad.
you spoke about a building in Jailtown where they've set up a small space with all the tools,
Mhm.
and I mean, I live in Jailtown, and I've only moved here in last 2 years, but I've been actively part of attending the strata meetings, and there are talks of making our building slightly more bike friendly. So which what led you to what are I mean, are there other such examples in downtown, or what do you think led you to convince them to go that extra step by putting in all these bike friendly infrastructure? Because I totally agree with you. I like
Mhm.
tinkering with my bike. I have 3 bikes, but
Mhm.
having that convenience just makes the whole experience so much better for everyone. And will and my hypothesis, it will motivate people to take up biking a lot more. So just to summarize my question, what
Yeah.
were a few things that you think worked in your favor to help convince that building strata to actually go ahead, go and take that extra mile?
Well, it wasn't Hub that convinced them to. It was looking at the market. We had another example, because in the case it's called the Smythe, it's the building, and they were just seeing that, empty nesters wanted to downsize. So maybe just instead of 2 cars, they sold the house. They're moving to a downtown condo. They want 1 car, and they want to start cycling. They're right on the seawall. They wanted the health that it brings. So they sought us out because they wanted to do that well to sell. They wanted to sell the condos. So that was easy. Another one was for West Build, and it was South Vancouver, like Marine Landing, they called it. And it was a strata industrial building. But they also did a market analysis. They were looking at potential buyers for their space and found that, again, they really, really wanted to see cycling facilities. And COVID, this was kind of COVID time too. So COVID even really raised the stakes in terms of people wanting to cycle, because cycling became the safe way to get to work versus public transit and so on. But with the Marine Landing, Westbuild put in, again, really gorgeous facilities. They only made it to gold with us. I'm trying to remember why, but they put in, again, full repair spaces, a community space, excellent bike parking, really good connections to the network. But they did it because like they realized they needed that. So they sought us out to advise it, just to help them sell. So, but I think different clients for us, we're finding there's different reasons to, for better or worse, some of the developers, they want hub advising because they want to get their rezoning application accepted by a municipality. And if we advise them and we give recommendations that they follow, and we explain to a municipality, well, here's all the recommendations we gave them, here's the ones they're adopting, so the plan's better than it was if they hadn't adopted. We may want them to adopt everything we do, but it's a big money choices for them, so they'll at least bring on some of it. Then the municipality say, well, they brought in hub to advise them, they've improved the cycling facilities, so that's one more sort of tick mark for them towards getting, say, a rezoning application approved or a development permit application approved. Now, we're not going to do that if we're not seeing there's actual improvements to what they would have otherwise done were it not for us advising them. But so that's a whole different motivation. Yeah, so there's lots of different reasons, lots of different value in term we provide. Some of them, it's just about wanting to be green. Like, Bentall Center, they just want to be able to put another badge on their site saying we're green. We're speaking with another the manager of some older buildings that have done complete green retrofits, and they also want the hub logo in terms of the cycling design. So I was just seeing a new from Tony. Hi, Tony. Larger opportunity for hub to support municipalities with OCP updates. Yeah, by archiving all meetings by sending that to alignment with new. Yeah, that's a big one now, because the province is just releasing a whole bunch of new legislation imposing things on the municipalities, which I think the municipalities may not regret, but it's a lot for them to take in at once. But yeah, they're doing TDM, transportation demand management requirements, transit-oriented development requirements. So buildings potentially allowing it, bigger buildings than they would have allowed, and potentially down to no car parking. Not many developers are going to go to no car parking because they still want to sell, but reducing it sure saves them a lot of money and a lot of development time. So that's a big motivator there as well. Yeah, and we're trying to rev up right now our next research project, which is on transit-oriented development. So you may know that that's something that the province announced late last year, early this year, was the requirement that near a SkyTrain or a bus loop, you have to have big buildings, and for a developer to propose as little as no parking for building residents. And so we've talked to the municipalities. And they're and said, we want to do research looking at building design. Let's collect some data about existing buildings that are kind of like TOD projects, and how much use there is, how much issue there is with abandoned bikes, clearing them out, how much actual demand is there, how might we project demand into the future, and how do we know we're right designing these buildings so that they work for multimodal travel and we don't get blowback, that we don't have buildings built with insufficient amount of car parking such that they don't sell, people don't want to buy into them because the rest of it isn't working, multimodal is not working, and the local neighborhoods are upset because they're finding cars are parked all over the place around them, because again, they weren't designed well for multimodal travel, so people are ending up buying cars as an outcome. So we're really keen to see transit-oriented development work, because it's a beautiful way towards a greener city and more people using active transportation. So we got 8 of the main municipalities in the region want to work with us. TransLink, MOTI, Urban Development Institute are really keen for us to work on it. Urban Land Institute said, yes, we want this research done. We've got School of Community and Regional Planning partner, a prof who just moved here who worked on this very same topic down in Portland in Oregon. And so right now I'm trying to find the funding to move the project forward. So I'm trying to round up the funding from municipalities, developers, and others. Just had a traffic engineering company say they're interested in funding it. But that will hopefully, if I can pull the funding together, that'll be our next research project, and will help get some more knowledge, get some more kind of templates, and really key to the municipalities and developers is a common approach to TOD to some extent around the region. Of course, each municipality has their own particularities and they need to do that, but that we're not all over the map and how we're approaching this as well. So we're hoping that will be our next research project. Yeah. So yeah, any other questions? What are we at? 7:22. My God, I can talk. I scare myself sometimes.
Hello, Tim. I'm Victor Martinez.
Yes.
I'm going to turn my camera off. I feel really bad at not. Okay, hi there.
Hi.
So I'm in Richmond. I just joined the hub chapter here.
Yes.
So I'm kind of new, learning names and lots of things happening. So
Yeah.
I'm really
Yeah.
impressed with the work that hub does. So I'm really looking forward to participate a bit more.
Great.
I just wanted to ask about the batteries, because it is really troubling what I have heard and what you mentioned. I also have seen the news, these fires is really terrible. For what I know, it's mostly about the quality of the batteries that is the issue. Not all batteries are the same.
Yeah.
But the question is more about any certification or standard that Canadian government requires for these products to be sold in Canada. Because one of the things that I also notice is that there are a lot of things that are illegal, and yet you can buy them.
Exactly.
And in open, Amazon and even stores in the on streets here in the city. How? Why is that happening?
Yeah. Well, I think, my kind of high level overview is it's just happening so fast. The policymakers can't keep up with it. It's the Wild West there in terms of electrification. I mean, your pedal assist e-bike. I had one of those. It got stolen from my underground. So damn that. But anyway, but you're seeing, regular e-bikes, e-scooters, but also every kind of other crazy e-mobility device under the sun. And they're all coming out. They're being sold quicker than, I think governments can respond. There are safety standards. The UL, I'm trying to remember, that's the US one. This is Canadian. We've been looking at this, but there are safety standards for e-bike batteries, for e-scooter batteries, and for equipment, but they're not required in Canada. You can import anything and sell it here.
Yeah.
Anything. And sorry, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say is to kind of be a bit more proactive in that sense. So what I was imagining or trying to get to is if hub at some way can help people understand which ones not to buy. And say, it's like a communication campaign saying, in the US, in Canada, and Europe, these are the standards. These are the stickers that you need to find. If these are not there, don't buy it. And it's more like a proactive type of approach, saying, we just need communication. We just need people to know what to do. And same thing with the maybe stratas. Say, look, don't measure everybody with the same stick. You should be looking for this. If the objects have these, it will be fine.
Yeah. Yes, and I think you're right. There's room to do more education on this. Now, I did just recently meet with staff from several municipalities, and they're interested in maybe working through TransLink or Metro Vancouver to get all the municipalities to look at this together, because their bylaws may not have even been developed in light of that. They all want electrification. They're adding all of this. But we're seeing some things like, yes, safety standards on the original equipment, but also your replacement battery, your replacement charger. But even ones that are safety standards over time can degrade, and there's certain telltale signs when it's time to replace even my safety certified battery, because you see it's starting to swell or discolor or something. Okay. But also, like one thing I heard that we learned that's interesting is a lithium battery fire for an e-bike or an e-scooter burns fast and quick, really fast, but it's almost gone quickly. The residual fire might be the tires. Well, if it's fairly isolated, not close enough to catch something else on fire, then poof, the sprinkler system comes on, you're good. It's when they're all right next to each other that goes to the next one, the next one, the next one. Then you have a big fire that will grow to other things. I mean, you've seen crazy things of, you know, big lots full of e-bikes in other countries. They're burnt for days and they can't put them out, right? They can't put them out. Right. So design in terms of distance between, the terms of, you know, the number of outlets and how many you can charge beside each other, because they only catch fire while you're charging them. They don't catch fire otherwise. It's during the charging process. So long as only one's being charged at a time and it's got, you know, you got distance from other ones, you got a good sprinkler system, then you can design for safety. Right. And some ideas we initially thought were good, or we're realizing, no, actually they're not. So we're also waiting for new equipment to come down the line. We're talking with equipment suppliers, and there's some new kind of bike racks and battery charging lockers and so on that are going to have integrated fire detection and suppression in them, but they're years off. Right. So they're early in development now. So there's some technological responses that could come in due course too. But yeah, I mean, you know, the worst case scenario, you're getting, you know, restrictive requirements from either building owners, stratas, or even municipal level saying you can't charge lithium ion batteries here inside buildings. Well, we don't want to go there. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That was it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's great. And Richmond, we haven't had a contract in Richmond yet. Been trying to get in because there's some like the Lansdowne and some other major developments going on in Richmond. Richmond's prime for good design because they got some really good cycling network going in there. We're just about to develop a new cycling map for Richmond. We're going to work with them on that. I didn't mention that's another part of our team's work is developing cycling maps using that GIS data set. So we've done them for Tri-Cities, Surrey, Burnaby, for Metro Vancouver for TransLink, and the next one we're doing is for the city of Richmond.
Super.
Yeah.
If there is nobody else with a question, can I do a bit of a personal promotion?
Fine by me.
Quickly, is that I'm a professor at Kwantlen Polytechnic in Lansdowne, precisely, in the School of Design, and my area of expertise is transportation. So I will be very, very interested in you know, putting my hat as academic and see if you know, in my classroom with my students, research projects, if there is any sort of support that Hub needs from a product design, industrial design perspective. You know, I have a classroom and a bunch of students and the time and resources to create stuff and, you know, produce prototypes or whatever. So just putting it out there.
Yeah, well, Victor, email me, Tim at Bike Hub, and let's follow up the discussion.
Yeah.
I want to delve more, not maybe here with everybody else. I want to delve more into your specialization and then and have that discussion for sure.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah. Okay. So any other questions for me?
Tim, I do have a bunch of questions, but probably I'll reach out to you on email as well to follow up on the previous question that I asked. But yeah, thanks for a very informative and you know, session and making us you know, aware of what all Hub is into, and this is certainly more than, you know, what I knew before. So this was eye-opening, and yeah, but keep on with the good work, and hopefully, you know, we can make great things happen together.
Well, you know, we're in the right place for it. I mean, you know, part of our success was, you know, initiative and innovation on the part of Hub team, but it wouldn't happen if we weren't Metro Vancouver. This city is ready for this stuff. So, you know, the municipalities and people are just paving the way for it. I mean, when I started Hub, the Downtown Vancouver Business Association was absolutely against all the bike routes going in. They thought it was the end of the world. Now they're our biggest champions. They sponsor us. Their president chairs our events. Like, things are changing fast in this city, and it's a great city to live in when you start seeing all the changes happening. And I don't mean just the city of Vancouver. I mean the whole region.
Absolutely, I can't agree more. But
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome, Tony. Thank you. So I don't know, Kathy, not sure if you had other agenda items. If I was the game in town, I think we're a wrap at this point.
Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening and giving part of your afternoon or evening. I've recorded the session, so I'll send it around in a follow-up email with any of the resources that Tim wants to share, including copies of the research report. But you can also find that online.
Yeah,
And
just everything's on the website. Everything's on the website. Yeah.
And for those of you who joined a bit later, the first part of the session was about the state of cycling report. So you'll see that in the recording if you missed that part. But yeah, any other questions, tim@bikehub.ca. And thanks again for all your advocacy work that you do on behalf of Hub.
Yeah.
We really wouldn't be able to do any of this work if you hadn't set the stage for us to have the clout with the municipalities that we've built because of the work that you've done. And we're only being taken seriously by these developers and by the municipalities because of the work, the groundwork that our advocates like you guys have done. So thank you so much.
That's the first point I make when I'm talking to any audience right now is that thanks to you folks, we really know cycling in the region.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, Tim, as well for the presentation and for sharing all your research and yeah, reach out to Tim if you have any potential contacts or if you can put him in touch with any developers who might benefit from his expertise and the team's
Or Stratus, older buildings like Barat, what you're talking about, interested to find out more. But yes.